Okay, so first, yep, we're ready to go.
Yes,
Yes, that's us all recording now, Provost.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending the special meeting of the Council to look at the accounts this afternoon. Can I just deal with the usual housekeeping tasks, because we are obviously looking at this online. I'll be as liberal as I can in terms of anybody who wants to speak in time and so forth. So please be patient. If you want to speak, put your hand up and I will get round to calling you back in. I would just ask people not to abuse the privilege and don't speak too long if you don't have to, please. Can I remind everyone that the meeting will be recorded and will be published on the Council's YouTube channel in due course, and also that Mr. Drew Sandilands, a local democracy reporter, will be sitting in on the meeting. Okay, so if I can move on to item number 1, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, Eamon?
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I've got apologies from Councillor Kane.
Okay. Can I move on then to item number 2, which is declarations of interest? Can I remind you all that the Councillors' Code of Conduct requires that elected members declare any financial or non-financial interest they may have in any of the items on the agenda. So are there any declarations of interest this afternoon? Nope, don't hear any. That's good. Wouldn't expect it to be, but good. So moving on then to item number 3, which is the annual accounts for the Council's charitable trusts and external audit ISA 260 report. This report has already been to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee earlier this afternoon. So before we discuss it, can I call in Councillor Miller just to speak to this item? Councillor Miller.
Thank you very much, Provost. The Audit and Scrutiny Committee has reviewed the audited annual accounts and the external audit report for the Council's 7 charitable trusts. We are pleased to note that the accounts have been awarded a clean audit certificate, and we will now remit this to the Council for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. I will now open it up for any comments that anybody may have or questions. No, you okay with that?
Right.
Can we move on then to item number 4, which is the full 2020-21 annual accounts and the draft annual audit report for the whole Council. Again, it's been to the Audit Committee earlier today. So to kick open the discussion, can I pass to Councillor Miller first?
Thanks again. The A&S Committee also reviewed the audited accounts for East Renfrewshire Council and heard the external auditors comment on their findings. Despite the challenges of carrying out the audit remotely, I'm happy to report that the external auditors and council staff have again managed to complete this exercise in line with the required deadline of 30th of November. Once again, we are pleased that the accounts have been awarded an unqualified audit certificate and have no unadjusted errors. As previously advised in June this year, the accounts showed that the Council operated well within budget, avoiding all non-essential expenditure to ensure that COVID pressures could be addressed. At 31st of March 2021, the balance on the non-earmarked general fund reserve sat at 11.67 million, which is 4.5% of our budget. This is slightly above the Council's 4% target, and is scheduled to fall back around 3% as a result of the Council 2021-22 budget decisions. The auditor's report is largely positive, but as always, various audit findings were listed. These can be found on page 69 of Appendix 1 and included an action plan completed by our officers to address all of the points raised. I would now remit the accounts and audit report to the Council for consideration. Can I also add a thanks to the finance staff, Margaret and Barbara, for all the work that they have done over the last year and a half, because it's been one hell of a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Can I remind councillors this afternoon that we are looking to approve these draft annual audit accounts. So can I now open it up for any comments or questions that people have? Councillor Wallace.
Well, thank you, Provost. I wonder if I might ask, did the audit committee have any issues at all with the accounts?
There was no questions at all on the accounts.
Okay. Not sure if I'm reading this correctly. Am I right in thinking that we've got an excess of £2 million from the grant that we were provided with for COVID? And if that is the case, is there any threat at all that we would have to pay that back if we have not actually spent that money? I've got one or two other questions as well, Provost. I wonder if that's could be addressed by somebody. Thanks.
Okay. Mrs. McCrossan, I see your hand up. Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, it's just to say that at close to the end of March, we did receive a significant amount of COVID-related grant from the government. That was to cover COVID pressures that we had encountered during 2021, but also for COVID pressures that we would encounter in the future. So the balances that we were holding in our reserves earmarked as unspent grants were much higher than you would normally expect. And the auditors have actually drawn attention to that in the report. These are earmarked for COVID pressures, and we can carry them forward and have carried them forward into this year on the expectation that they will be used purely to meet COVID pressures in the current year. If we still have a balance remaining at the end of this financial year, I would expect that any balance would be able to be used in next financial year, again, solely to address ongoing COVID pressures.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah. Could I raise an issue on capital at this stage, capital account?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a number of questions, fire away.
Yeah. The other thing we're a bit concerned about, or very concerned about, is how we're dealing with, there seems to be a technical issue about how we account about our capital accounting, our method of accounting for capital. And from what I can understand, with COSLA and with the Scottish Government, there's been no direct agreement as to how, to do with the PPP or PFI, whatever we want to refer it as to how we actually account for that in our accounts. And it, depending on what decision is made there, could have a huge impact on our capital and how we propose to be spending money. I mean, thinking of the leisure centre, thinking of the straightening of the Ors Road and what have you, all these various capital investments that we're about to make could be dramatically impacted depending on this accounting issue. I wonder if somebody could maybe give us just a bit more information on that. It just seems to be very vague just now. I appreciate it is very technical, but even if it could be put in layman's terms that we could maybe understand the potential impact for capital expenditure moving forward, depending on what decision is made by Scottish Government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Mrs. McCrossan, are you able to respond to that?
I'll respond, but I think it must be almost impossible to do this really clearly, because this debate has been going on for some time. It's hugely complex. I think you were actually alluding to two different issues. There's how we account for PFI PPP debt. That's known as the service concession issue. And there's a separate issue on capital accounting and statutory mitigations, which is something else. Dealing with the PFI PPP one first. You'll recall a couple of years ago, we changed the way we accounted for our general borrowing for normal council capital projects. And effectively, we spread the accounting charges for our borrowing repayments over the life of the asset rather than the life of the loan. So if you have a school that lasts 50 years and you have a loan that lasts 30 years, we stretch the accounting entries over the life of the school for all 50 years so that residents who are using the school in all of the 50 years are taking some of the costs for it. So that was done a few years ago, and basically the proposal is that in future we should be allowed to do the same thing for PFI PPP debt. That is something that's being discussed at the moment with the Scottish Government, and we understand that that will be allowed. The technical accounting entries for that have still to be agreed, but we understand that that will be allowed, and I think that would bring it in line with how we treat the rest of the debt. So that's on the PFI PPP side. The capital accounting is even more technical, and again, it relates to how we charge our capital borrowing costs to the accounts. It's hard to explain the technical accounting entries in this one, but effectively, if we change the way in which we account for these capital repayments, it could mean that we have to charge more to the current years, the early years of a project, and it would make projects more expensive because effectively you would be paying a larger amount up front and less later.
Provost, I wonder if I might ask then, when are we going to get a decision on this, particularly the latter one? I appreciate the first one you've mentioned there, the PPP, PFI, and that really what we're doing is our poor children and grandchildren are going to take the cost instead of ourselves. But presumably that's just to try and make the accounts just a bit easier in the short term. But the second one, I suspect will have a significant impact if on what our decision making is going to be with capital expenditure or new projects moving forward. So do we know when a decision for that will come forward? Will it be before our budget is really the kind of key question. Thanks.
I'm not sure that I can say it will be before the budget. The Directors of Finance Group have been asked to put in a submission on this, and that has been finalised. We would not wish there to be such a change in accounting practice for the reasons that I've explained. It would make our capital schemes more expensive at the moment. So we are waiting to hear back from the Scottish Government as to what their final views are on this. We expect the budget announcement in December. I'm not sure whether at that point we'll hear or whether it will be into the new year.
Okay, Provost, I mean, I appreciate that many years ago we were extremely prudent in how we undertook a number of these projects and how we accepted these different methods of accounting. Could I ask then, would you believe it to be prudent for us to be making a decision on capital spend on projects such as the leisure centre prior to us knowing what the decision will be from Scottish Government?
I would expect that even if we were to get a swift decision from the Scottish Government, if there was a change, it would take quite some time for all the technical guidance to come out. And with such a significant change, and bear in mind that there's a strong opinion from the finance sector and basically all the Scottish councils that we would not want the change. I think it would have something that would have to be poured over for a long time to get the technical accounting agreed and probably phased in over a number of years, or at least quite a long lead-in time. So I don't think there would be an immediate need to halt any investment plans at the moment.
Sorry, I don't understand. If you don't know what the impact will be on our shorter term expenditure, how would it be prudent to just go ahead without knowing what that decision will be?
Basically, if we didn't take a decision, it could take years before this is implemented, if indeed it is, and we would be saying there would be no capital investment whatsoever, no new capital investment, which seems very risky, given that with capital inflation being high at the moment, if you were to wait several years before you even initiated a project, it would be more expensive anyway.
So what you're saying is we don't really know what the real cost is going to be overall, but let's just go ahead. Is that really what you're saying?
I'm saying in the professional opinion, we are strongly against this. We have made a very strong case that this change should not be made, and I don't think it's a change that could be made quickly. I think it's some way down the line, and I wouldn't wish to stop any investment in the interim. What we would be able to do is prioritise our investment so that if we were facing higher costs across our whole 10-year capital plan, which remember we do plan very broadly and quite far in advance for capital, you could prioritise which projects you could afford to bring in at a later stage. But large-scale projects that are seen as significant priorities, I wouldn't necessarily feel that you have to stop in the tracks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Buchanan.
Yeah, thanks very much, Provost. Can I begin maybe by initially touching on the capital accounting measures? Yes, there is an ongoing battle, if you like, the battle of accountants between local government accountants and the various views that Margaret has just touched on, and Scottish Government accountants. My understanding is that that will go to, if you like, independent arbitration, and they'll decide which way is correct or right for the longer term. But as Margaret suggested, it doesn't impact directly on our capital plans at the moment. We are focusing on what we can do and what we would look to take forward. So there won't be any impact in the short term on that. What I would say is that the biggest risk that I can see at the moment in terms of any capital is the impact of material costs and labour costs, more directly related to Brexit than anything else and any accounting methods. And I also thank the Audit Committee and Councillor Miller for doing the due diligence on our accounts, and of course our finance team and everybody working on that to get us to the position that we are in, which is, as has been highlighted, a positive position despite the difficulties of the past year with funding coming to us at different stages and from unknown positions, in that, you know, we had to take decisions based on what we knew, but some of the funding didn't arrive until much later, and we will deal with that going forward. But thankfully we are in a positive position and that will enable us to tackle some of the issues as we move forward to tackle the recovery phase of the pandemic that hopefully we are now moving into. So once again, thanks to everyone concerned and to the Audit Committee and Councillor Miller for their comments in relation to that. And I assume we'd be happy to approve the accounts accordingly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buchanan. Are there any other comments or questions on the accounts? Don't see any other hands raised. So can I approve the accounts here today, or the draft accounts?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Thank you very much. We'll approve that, item number 4, and that concludes the business this afternoon. So again, thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at the December council meeting.
Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, the Chair.
Thanks, Provost.
Bye.